devastating wake in Puerto Rico, Florida, and South Carolina. The death toll is high, and this storm could wind up being among the costliest ever. South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace joins us now. Congresswoman Mace, thank you so much for joining us. The images from Puerto Rico and Florida are devastating. What's our coast, the coast of South Carolina, like?
Well, certainly Charleston dodged a bullet on Friday, but just north of here between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, not so lucky. We had the highest storm surge since Hurricane Hugo, and the images of Pawleys Island and Garden City and Myrtle Beach are devastating. And after flooding, sometimes comes fires, and Pawleys Island and Garden City had some similar fires. And we've got a little bit of time, days and weeks ahead to clean up and recover from Hurricane Ian. Just as a Category 1, the images were pretty devastating as well.
Congresswoman, one would think that giving aid to those impacted by natural disaster would be above politics, but I want you to listen to the Vice President, and then I'm going to get you to respond on the other side.
Our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity.
Yeah, I actually listened to the entire clip. She also prioritized women, Congresswoman, as getting aid before others. I cannot speak to California. I don't know what happens there. I can tell you in South Carolina, frequently women actually live with men. So how in the world do you prioritize giving a woman in Pawleys Island hurricane relief, but not a man if they live in the same house? I was dumbfounded by what she said.
Well, it's literally the definition of discrimination. Hurricanes don't see color. Hurricanes don't see political affiliation. Hurricanes don't see gender. All they see is destruction along the coast where they hit. And it is incredibly racist. Can you imagine someone saying the exact opposite, that only whites and men should get hurricane resources first? I mean, that's crazy town. And the fact that the Vice President of the United States is making those kinds of comments shows a lack of leadership. Everyone, regardless of the color of their skin, their gender, their orientation, where they live, their zip code, should have access to hurricane funding and resources and cleanup, and that's what should happen in this country. We shouldn't see it through the lens of color like the Vice President does.
Yeah, I mean, how about we just do it based on need? I mean, whoever needs it the most, do that first. All right, let me ask you about aid. Is there sufficient aid already budgeted to FEMA and elsewhere to cover the losses, or will Congress need to appropriate more for U.S. states and territories?
I can't imagine that we won't have to appropriate more for the states and territories that have been the most affected. If you look at Florida alone, we're talking about the most expensive disaster in history in the state of Florida, billions of dollars. And yet when we voted for the continuing resolution on Friday, we sent billions of dollars overseas rather than having it here at home for those who need it the most to recover from this disaster. And so I can't imagine we won't need more funding than what's already been appropriated for natural disasters, looking at the devastation in Puerto Rico and Florida and even along the coast of South Carolina. And I want to take a moment and thank Governor Ron DeSantis. I want to thank Governor Henry McMaster, those who've been on the front lines leading their states through this crisis, through enormous challenges. They've both done a great job.
And I'll also add my old colleague Pedro Pierluisi, who is the governor of Puerto Rico. I cannot imagine having an island, a state devastated the way Florida. And of course, we lived through Hugo. That may have been before your time, but I lived through Hugo. So my wife and I were just in Pawleys Island about 2 weeks ago. It is an absolutely gorgeous part of the world, and our hearts are broken over the images that we see. And good luck to you as you make sure the people get what they need based on need to recover from this natural disaster.
Thank you, Trey.
Yes, ma'am.